Hello YouTube, thank you for joining us today. I am Max, welcome to this DebateCraft production. Today we are doing a DebateCraft.com features update. I am excited to be joined by our head developer, Savant, and we're going to discuss the brand new database section. Savant, how you doing?
I'm doing great today, thank you.
Good to hear. Thanks for being here. So let's jump right into it. Tell me, what is the new database feature?
Well, it's pretty simple. It's a feature where someone can submit an argument for any particular position, and anyone can go in and respond to any arguments, and you can submit as yourself or you can submit anonymously.
It sounds pretty simple. So give me, what we're going to start with, I want you to tell me, what is the purpose behind this feature?
So, the purpose behind the feature is I see a lot of times on social media when people are sort of engaging with arguments or arguing with them, there's not really a lot of complexity behind it because oftentimes the things that rise to the top or get the most likes are just like very simple, bare bones arguments. And they're oftentimes just the same argument repeated a lot of times because that's what gets the most engagement. And then there's not really a lot of pushback. Once people get into an echo chamber, usually there's a lot of the responses are just agreement with the initial premise. So what sets the database feature apart is that every argument has to be disagreeing with the previous argument. So it'll be like argument and then counter argument and then counter argument to that. And so when people are rating these arguments or rating counter arguments, they're not rating it against the ones they're arguing against. It would be rating arguments for the same position against other arguments for that position. So the way that it should work out is that if you want to, I don't know, learn the most about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, then you would just read like the highest rated argument on one side of that, and then you could read the highest rated counter to that, and then the highest rated counter to that. So you're really seeing both sides cross-examine each other to the maximum that they can.
So it's already just it's very new and it's already kind of an in-depth feature and it's very cool. And I appreciate the way you just described it. And we're going to touch on that a little bit more in a moment. But I wanted to also ask because you'd made a forum post calling on finding objective truth. How does that connect to the database feature?
Yeah, so this is a concept that I've been thinking about for a while, and I think that there's a lot of assumptions with behind debating and the way that people try to learn things. And I think too that a lot of people believe like, oh, when you're presented with evidence for a new position or arguments that contradict your existing views, people won't listen to that, or to some extent, arguments are a lost cause. But I think if we take that to its conclusion, then it would assume that people just can't learn anything, or you can't trust anything that you've learned because if you think you learned one thing, then it's just as likely that you just sort of accepted evidence for the wrong side or you learned the wrong lesson from evidence. If people just aren't learning anything from arguments at all, then people would never learn anything at all because that's really the only way we have to get closer to objective truth. So the theory behind the database feature is that all the information that to get like the best position on a topic or the best estimate of whether a resolution is true or not is out there. And so if you read the strongest arguments for both sides, starting from a position of maybe having some information of the topic, maybe having an opinion already, that reading the strongest thing for both sides would get you closer to the truth. And it's not redundant because all the best arguments are in one place. So you're not seeing 100 posts that are making the same surface level point in favor of a position. The point gets made once, and people are selecting the best version of an argument for something. And then once that's there, people can select sort of the best argument against that. So I think that basically, if we assume that the methods people are already using to find objective truth, like intuition or debating or information from experts, if those are accurate at all, then it should be possible to aggregate those sources of information into the top argument for a position and the top counter argument.
There's certainly a broader philosophical discussion to be had at another time in terms of the feature itself, and it certainly, if it reaches that level that you've described there, it's going to be an amazing feature to the site. I want to touch again on that post, and in that forum post, you said that the feature was intentionally adversarial. What do you mean by that?
Okay, so what I've referred to the database feature partly as is argument mapping, where you're finding arguments for a position and then all the counter arguments for it. And once the counter arguments are there, it's like there for everyone to see. And if a good argument is made, people don't have to keep making it again and again. Just everyone is assumed that they can come here and see the argument. So people can just focus on the next step, which is responding to it and so on. So that's what I would consider argument mapping. So this process of argument mapping, not deciding which side wins, but just deciding the best argument for each side, it's designed for people to be fighting against each other, to be adversarial. And that's like a feature, not a bug. So even if, I don't know, the CIA is making arguments in favor of Israel and Iran's propaganda department is making arguments in favor of Palestine, that doesn't matter, because if they're making good arguments for their side, that's what we want. It doesn't matter where the argument comes from. So if your goal is to see the best argument for that side, if their arguments are terrible, then they just won't be rated the highest and nobody will pay attention to them. If they're a good argument for the side, then they'll have to be gathering evidence or getting some persuasive evidence for that side. Now, it is technically possible to game the feature, and the way you would do that is you would rate highly bad arguments for the other side, so those rise to the top. And when someone is seeing the best argument for the other side, they just don't see a lot of substance behind it. However, based on what I've seen on social media and what I think I know about human nature, I think it is very counter to human nature for people to just see a bad argument for a side they disagree with and rate it highly. So I think that by sort of fighting each other and arguing things out and being forced to see arguments for the other side half the time, what we'll eventually end up seeing is people will make the strongest arguments for their side. Bad service level stuff will get drowned out by the higher quality arguments, and the best stuff will rise to the top. And that's really only the first phase of defining objective truth, because it's just showing the best arguments for both sides. I had another sort of section on how I was theorizing how you would judge which side, get like a best estimate for what the objective truth is from there. But at least as far as aggregating the information goes, both sides can be competing, and it can be intentional that both sides are competing, and that can actually be a good thing. It can bring people closer to the truth, in my view.
It'll certainly be fascinating to see how that plays out. The organic nature of enough people kind of democratically pushing the top arguments to have the most visibility. So it'll be interesting to see that, especially in terms of the site and how that site feature plays a role. So because we have forums, we have unranked debates, we have ranked debates and ultra-rated debates, plus we have a mafia and a games forum. So this seems like a quick new feature, but I want to know, what do you feel that this, or how do you feel this feature plays a role in the future of the site?
Yeah, so I think, as you said, it's quicker, it's easier to use. Where if you really want to go in depth and add arguments, you can spend a lot of time on it. But if you don't want to make a super huge time commitment, like with the ultra rated debates, which are randomly assigned topics and opponents, and it's a lot of work and time commitment. But this, you could just go on and you could just rate arguments, and you could every argument that disagrees with you, you could rate terribly, but it wouldn't really affect the feature, because all it's really keeping track of is how they're ranked against each other. So you could put minimum effort in. You could just make very basic arguments, and it accepts all that. It would fit in somewhere to the arguments, and even just rating arguments based on how convincing they are to you, which takes probably the least amount of effort of anything on the site, is still improving the argument database and improving the information out there. And so I think it sort of appeals to the more normie crowd, and it could appeal to the more hardcore debating crowd as well.
That's a good answer, and I'm excited to use the feature myself, maybe write a couple arguments, but I'm really excited to see how it all plays out so that I can quickly go to any argument I happen to see, maybe a top-rated one or one that's gotten the most views, and kind of see just what arguments have been made. Do you foresee the feature being used that way? People are just going to like quickly, okay, this is an interesting argument, or this is an interesting concept, and then quickly just go see what arguments have been made?
Yeah, I mean that's my hope as well, is that if there are certain topics that everybody wants to argue, like let's say immigration or something, that if you want to know what there is about the topic, the adversarial nature of it will just filter out the bad, or will filter it so that all the character count is focused on the substance, and you could see and all the true verifiable information that favors one side of the debate, that side will bring up. All the best information that favors the other side will be brought up by the other side. So in between the two sides, you'll see all the relevant information on the topic, and probably the best philosophical frameworks in favor of and against particular policy proposals. That's how I'm hoping it'll be used. People will just look at the top arguments for a particular topic, and then the people who are more hardcore will as also just be making arguments and sort of competing to see who can be the best at arguing for each particular side.
It's going to be exciting to see how that plays out, and if it can truly become a just organic uh, database of or debate knowledge. I mean, is that the goal? You see it literally become a database of argumentation knowledge?
Yeah, I'm hoping, and I'm hoping that the network effect, once it gets big enough and people pick up, they'll see, oh, the other side is making good arguments, so I'd better go and make an argument for my side, and the competitive nature of that will grow it. That's what I'm hoping, because if only one side is really using it and one side isn't making great arguments for the other side, then it kind of fails in its purpose. But if the best of both sides, or at least highly qualified people on both sides, are competing in it, then I think it could be really good.
We might have to make adjustments over time to see how this works out, but I think as a foundational thing, it's such a cool concept. I'm excited to see where it goes. Savant, thank you so much for being here. Please, every listener and viewer, like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you think of this feature. Please head over to debatecraft.com. Check it out for yourself. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.